The dust swirled around Mary's skirts as she clutched the train ticket in her trembling hand, her eyes fixed on the hulking iron beast that would carry her away from Cottonwood Springs forever. The year was 1879, and everything she'd ever known was about to disappear in a cloud of steam and coal smoke. She didn't hear the approaching footsteps until a deep voice cut through her thoughts. "You don't have to board it." Mary turned to find a tall cowboy watching her, his weathered face partially hidden beneath the shadow of his hat. His boots were scuffed, his denim worn, but there was something in his steady gaze that made her breath catch. "I beg your pardon." She managed, clutching her carpet bag tighter against her side. "That train," he said, nodding toward the locomotive. "Whatever you're running from, maybe there's another way." Mary stiffened. "I'm not running from anything, sir. I'm simply traveling eastward to accept a position as a governess." The man's eyes blew as the endless western sky studied her face. "Name's Owen Blackwood, and with respect, miss, folks who ain't running don't usually look at trains like they're staring down the barrel of a gun." The whistle blew, making Mary jump. 10 minutes until departure. 10 minutes to decide the course of her life. "I don't see how my affairs are any concern of yours, Mr. Blackwood," she said, her voice steadier than she felt. Owen removed his hat, revealing sandy hair that curled slightly at the ends. "They ain't. But I know trouble when I see it, and you've got it written all over your pretty face." Mary flushed, both at the compliment and his presumption. "The only trouble I have, sir, is that I might miss my train if this conversation continues." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "Then I won't keep you. But if you're interested in options that don't involve leaving everything behind, I could use a schoolteacher for the children at Willow Creek Ranch. Pays fair, accommodations decent." Mary blinked in surprise. "A schoolteacher? I don't have credentials." "Can you read, write, and cipher?" "Of course." "Then you're qualified. There are 12 children out there with no education to speak of. My sister's been trying, but she's got her hands full with the ranch accounts and her own young ones." The train whistle blew again. 5 minutes. Mary glanced at the ticket in her hand. The governess position in Boston promised security, but also servitude to a family she'd never met, and it would take her thousands of miles from the only home she'd ever known. "Why would you offer employment to a complete stranger?" she asked suspiciously. "Because good teachers are hard to come by out here, and you don't strike me as the type who belongs in a big eastern city." His eyes held hers. "Plus, you look like you could use a friend right about now." The last call for boarding echoed across the platform. Mary felt her heart pounding. The letter in her pocket seemed to burn through the fabric, the letter from Matthew Holloway informing her that her childhood home was being sold to cover her father's debts. The home where she'd nursed her father through his final illness, only to discover he'd mortgaged everything they had. "I don't even know you," she whispered. "No," Owen agreed. "But sometimes the devil you don't know is better than the one you do." Mary swallowed hard. "The children what ages?" 5 to 15. "Eager to learn, most of them. Ranch hands kids, some orphans we've taken in." The conductor was calling final boarding. Mary looked at the train, then back at this strange cowboy with his unexpected offer. "If I'm not satisfied with the arrangement, will you bring me back to catch the next train east?" she asked, surprising herself with the question. Owen nodded solemnly. "You have my word." Mary took a deep breath and tore her ticket in half. "I must be losing my mind." For the first time, Owen smiled fully, transforming his rugged face, or finding it. "Come on, miss." "Mary," she supplied. "Mary Sullivan." "Well, Miss Sullivan, my wagon's this way." "Hope you don't mind a bit of dust." As they walked away from the station, Mary couldn't help glancing back at the train as it belched steam and began to roll forward. She just turned her back on what had seemed like her only escape. Yet somehow, walking beside this tall stranger toward an uncertain future felt strangely like walking toward home. The journey to Willow Creek Ranch was longer than Mary had anticipated. They'd been traveling for nearly 3 hours, the wagon jolting over rutted trails that hardly deserved to be called roads. Her back ached, and she clutched the wooden seat as the wheels hit yet another hole. "Not much farther now," Owen said, noticing her discomfort. "Sorry about the rough ride." Spring rains washed out some of the better trails. Mary nodded, trying to hide her exhaustion. The landscape around them was unlike anything she'd seen before, vast and untamed, with rolling hills giving way to dramatic mesas in the distance. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the terrain, painting everything in gold and amber. "It's beautiful," she admitted. "Different from what I'm used to." "Where are you from originally?" Owen asked, his eyes on the trail ahead. "I was born in Missouri, but my father moved us to Cottonwood Springs when I was just a girl. He wanted to try his hand at ranching." She smiled sadly. "He wasn't particularly successful at it." Owen nodded. "Ranching's not for the faint of heart. Takes more than just wanting it." "Yes, I learned that the hard way." Mary hesitated, then decided there was no point in hiding her circumstances. "My father passed 6 months ago, consumption, left nothing but debts." "I'm sorry," Owen said, and the simple sincerity in his voice brought unexpected tears to Mary's eyes. "Thank you." She blinked them away quickly. "What about your family? You mentioned a sister, Margaret. She's 3 years younger than me. Her husband Thomas and I run the ranch together. It was our father's before he was killed in a range war back in '73. "I'm sorry," Mary echoed his earlier sentiment. Owen shrugged. "It was a long time ago. We've built something good since then. Not the biggest spread in the territory, but it's profitable and we treat our hands fair." They crested a hill and Owen pulled the wagon to a stop. "There it is," he said with quiet pride. Willow Creek. Spread out before them was a valley with a winding creek cutting through its center. Clustered near the water was a collection of buildings, a large 2-story house, several smaller cabins, a barn, corrals, and what appeared to be a bunkhouse. Cattle dotted the surrounding pastures and horses grazed in a fenced meadow. "It's lovely," Mary said, meaning it. As they approached, she saw children playing near the creek, their laughter carrying on the breeze. A woman emerged from the main house, shading her eyes against the setting sun. "That's Margaret," Owen said, waving to his sister. They pulled up to the house and Owen jumped down, coming around to help Mary from the wagon. Her legs felt stiff from the long ride, and she wobbled slightly as her boots touched the ground. Owen's hand steadied her elbow. "Easy there." Margaret approached, curiosity evident in her face. She was a pretty woman with the same blue eyes as her brother, though her hair was darker. "Owen, I wasn't expecting you back until tomorrow," she said, her gaze shifting to Mary. "Change of plans," Owen replied. "Margaret, this is Miss Mary Sullivan. She's agreed to take on teaching the children." Margaret's eyes widened in surprise, then relief flooded her features. "Truly, oh, Miss Sullivan, you're an answer to prayers. I've been trying to keep up with lessons, but with the ranch accounts and my own little ones." She trailed off, then reached out to grasp Mary's hands. "You're most welcome here." Mary felt herself relax slightly at the warm reception. "Thank you." "I should warn you that I have no formal training as a teacher." Margaret waved this concern away. "Can you read, write, do sums?" "Yes, of course." "Then you're better educated than most folks around here. The children will benefit greatly from your knowledge." She turned to her brother. "I'll show Miss Sullivan to the small cabin. We fixed it up last month, hoping we'd find someone." Owen nodded. "I'll see to the horses then." He tipped his hat to Mary. "See you at supper, Miss Sullivan." As he led the wagon toward the barn, Margaret linked her arm through Mary's. "Come along. You must be exhausted from the journey. The cabin isn't fancy, but it's clean and private." The small cabin was indeed simple, just one room with a bed, a table with 2 chairs, a small stove, and a chest of drawers. But the windows were hung with cheerful curtains, and a colorful quilt covered the bed. "It's perfect," Mary said, setting down her carpet bag. "The washroom is just behind the main house. We have hot water every day. Thomas insisted on proper plumbing when we expanded the ranch." Margaret smiled proudly. "Supper's at 6 in the main house. Rest until then if you'd like." After Margaret left, Mary sank onto the bed, the reality of her impulsive decision finally hitting her. She'd abandoned her secure plans based on the word of a stranger, a handsome stranger, but a stranger nonetheless. What did she know about Owen Blackwood or his ranch? What if this was all a terrible mistake? She opened her carpet bag and withdrew the few possessions she'd brought with her: 2 dresses besides the one she wore, undergarments, a hairbrush, her mother's locket, and a dog-eared copy of Jane Eyre. At the bottom lay her father's pocket watch, the only item of value she'd kept. Mary clutched the watch, remembering her father's face. Despite his failings as a businessman, he'd been a good man who'd loved her dearly. What would he think of her current circumstances? A knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. She hastily wiped her eyes and opened it to find a girl of about 15 standing there with a pitcher of water and some towels. "Ma sent these over," the girl said. "I'm Abigail, but everyone calls me Abby. Mrs. Hayes is my ma." "Thank you, Abby. I'm Miss Sullivan." The girl nodded. "Everyone's real excited about having a teacher. Is it true you're from a city?" Mary smiled. "Hardly, just a small town not unlike this one." "Oh," Abby looked slightly disappointed. "Well, we're still glad you're here. The little ones especially need learning." "I can already read pretty good, but Ma says I need to work on my numbers." "I'd be happy to help with that," Mary said. Abby beamed. "Supper's almost ready. Want me to walk you over when it's time?" "That would be kind, thank you." After the girl left, Mary used the water to wash away the dust from travel. She changed into her best dress, a simple blue cotton with white piping, and pinned her hair back neatly. Looking in the small mirror hanging on the wall, she hardly recognized herself. There was a flush to her cheeks that hadn't been there that morning, a brightness in her eyes that had been absent for months. When Abby returned to escort her to supper, Mary felt a flutter of nervousness. She was about to meet the people who would become her community if she decided to stay. And she would see Owen again, the man who had changed the course of her life with a simple observation and an unexpected offer. The main house was warm and welcoming, filled with the aroma of home cooking. Mary was introduced to Thomas Hayes, Margaret's husband, a tall man with kind eyes and a ready smile. Their 3 children, 2 boys aged 7 and 5, and a 4-year-old girl watched Mary with undisguised curiosity. Several ranch hands had also been invited to supper, clearly a regular occurrence. Mary tried to remember all their names as they were introduced, but only a few stuck. Caleb, the foreman, Eduardo, the horse trainer, and Sarah, Caleb's wife, who helped with the cooking. Owen entered last, freshly washed and wearing a clean shirt. His eyes found Mary across the room, and he nodded in greeting. There was something in his gaze that made her stomach tighten inexplicably. The meal was abundant: roast beef, potatoes, fresh bread, and vegetables from the garden. The conversation flowed easily around Mary, with ranch business, local gossip, and good-natured teasing dominating the table talk. Occasionally, someone would make an effort to include her, asking about her background or her journey. "So, Miss Sullivan," Thomas said during a lull in conversation, "Owen tells us you were headed east when he intercepted you." Mary dabbed her lips with a napkin. "Yes, I had arranged for a position as a governess in Boston." "Boston," one of the ranch hands exclaimed. "That's mighty far." "Indeed," Mary replied, "but circumstances required a fresh start." "Well, their loss is our gain," Margaret said warmly. "The children here have been making do with whatever schooling we can cobble together." "Where will I be teaching?" Mary asked. "We've converted one of the old storage buildings into a schoolhouse," Thomas explained. "Nothing fancy, but it has desks, a blackboard, and some books." "I've ordered more books from Denver," Owen added. "Should arrive within the month." Mary nodded, touched by the preparations they'd made even before securing a teacher. "And how many students should I expect?" 12 regular ones," Margaret answered. "Ages 5 to 15. Some days there might be more when the hands from neighboring ranches bring their children over." "I see," Mary said, feeling slightly overwhelmed at the prospect of teaching such a wide age range. "When would you like me to begin?" "How about Monday?" Thomas suggested. "That gives you tomorrow and Sunday to settle in and prepare." "That sounds reasonable," Mary agreed. After supper, while the others gathered in the sitting room, Mary slipped outside onto the porch, needing a moment of quiet to process everything. The night was clear, with stars scattered like diamonds across the velvet sky. She'd never seen so many stars in her life. The door opened behind her, and she turned to find Owen stepping out, 2 cups of coffee in hand. He offered one to her. "Thought you might need this," he said. "It can be a bit overwhelming, meeting everyone at once." Mary accepted the cup gratefully. "Thank you. Your family and the others have been very welcoming. They're good people." Owen leaned against the porch railing. Having second thoughts, Mary considered lying, then decided against it. A few, she admitted. It's rather a lot to take in. Owen nodded. Fair enough. My offer stands if you decide this isn't for you. I'll take you back to the station myself. I appreciate that. She sipped her coffee, finding comfort in its warmth. May I ask you something, Mr. Blackwood? Owen, he corrected. And yes. Why did you really stop me at the station today? The truth, please. Owen was quiet for a long moment, his eyes on the distant mountains. Truth is, I saw something in your face that I recognized. Something lost, something searching. He turned to look at her. And I know what it's like to feel like your only choice is to run. Sometimes, though, what you need is right where you are, or at least closer than you think. Mary's throat tightened with unexpected emotion. That's very perceptive of you, he shrugged. Just observation, plus we really did need a teacher. A comfortable silence fell between them, broken only by the chirping of crickets and the occasional lowing of cattle in the distance. Mary felt a strange sense of peace settle over her, different from anything she'd experienced in the tumultuous months since her father's death. I think I'll turn in, she said finally. It's been quite a day. Owen straightened. I'll walk you back to your cabin. The short walk was silent, but not uncomfortably so. At her door, Mary turned to thank him. I'm grateful for the opportunity, whether I stay or not, she said softly. Owen's eyes, silver in the moonlight, held hers. I hope you do, Miss Sullivan. Good night. As Mary settled into the unfamiliar bed that night, listening to the new sounds of her surroundings, she realized that for the first time in months, she was looking forward to tomorrow. Over the next 2 days, Mary familiarized herself with the ranch and its routines. Margaret showed her the converted storage building that now served as a schoolhouse. It was rustic but functional, with rows of simple desks, a teacher's table at the front, and a blackboard mounted on the wall. Bookshelves held a modest collection of readers, arithmetic primers, and a few well-worn novels. It's not much, Margaret apologized, but we've done what we could. It's more than adequate, Mary assured her, already planning how to organize lessons for children of such varying ages. On Sunday, Mary attended the small church service held in the ranch's common room. Nearly everyone from the ranch was present, along with families from neighboring properties who had ridden in for the occasion. The circuit preacher, a Reverend Johnson, delivered a simple but heartfelt sermon on community and helping one's neighbors. After the service, during the communal meal that followed, Mary met many of her future students and their parents. The children regarded her with a mixture of curiosity and apprehension, while the parents expressed genuine gratitude for her presence. My Billy can barely write his name, one mother confided. His pa and I never had much schooling ourselves. We want better for him. I'll do my best, Mary promised. Touched by the woman's trust, throughout these interactions, Mary was aware of Owen's presence. He moved easily among the gathered families, respected by all, a natural leader, though he seemed to wear the role lightly. Occasionally, their eyes would meet across the room, and he would offer a small nod or smile that made her heart beat just a little faster. Monday morning arrived clear and bright. Mary woke before dawn, nervous energy propelling her from bed. She dressed carefully in her most professional-looking attire, a high-necked blouse and dark skirt, and pinned her hair in a neat bun at the nape of her neck. After a quick breakfast in the main house, she made her way to the schoolhouse, where Margaret had shown her a small bell mounted outside the door. Ring it when you're ready for them to come in, she had instructed. Mary took a deep breath and pulled the rope. The bell's clear tone rang out across the ranch, and within minutes, children began appearing from various directions. They lined up outside the door as they'd clearly been instructed to do, watching Mary with wide eyes. Good morning, she said, trying to project confidence she didn't entirely feel. I'm Miss Sullivan, your teacher. Please come in and find a seat. The children filed in quietly, the younger ones gravitating toward the front and the older ones claiming desks at the back. Mary counted 11 heads one student was missing from the expected 12. She had just begun to introduce herself properly when the door burst open, and a boy of about 10 rushed in, his hair uncombed and shirt partially untucked. Sorry, Miss Sullivan, he gasped. Had to help Pa with a sick calf. That's quite all right, Mary said. Please take a seat and… Jack, the boy supplied. Jack Miller. Thank you, Jack. As I was saying, I'm Miss Sullivan and I'll be your teacher. I'd like to start by learning all your names and a little about what you've studied before. The morning passed in a blur of introductions, assessments, and establishing rules. Mary quickly discovered that the children's education levels varied dramatically. 8-year-old Emma could barely recognize her letters, while 13-year-old William was reading at a level that would have impressed many adults. Abby, as she'd mentioned, was strong in reading but struggled with mathematics. By noon, when Mary rang the bell to dismiss them for lunch, she had a clearer idea of the challenge before her. She would need to organize groups based on ability rather than age, and some children would require individual attention to catch up. She was making notes at her desk when a knock came at the door. Looking up, she found Owen standing there with a cloth-covered basket. "Thought you might be hungry," he said, entering and placing the basket on her desk. "First day can be exhausting." "Thank you," Mary said, surprised and touched by the thoughtfulness. "It has been rather intense, but in a good way. The children are eager to learn," Owen smiled. "They're good kids, lacking in opportunity, not ability," he gestured to the basket. "Margaret sent some chicken, bread, and apple pie. Said you need to keep your strength up." Mary peeked under the cloth. "This is very kind. How's it going so far?" Owen leaned against one of the student desks, crossing his arms. "Better than I expected. There's a wide range of abilities, but that's to be expected. I'm developing a plan to address everyone's needs." Owen nodded approvingly. "You're a natural teacher then," Mary laughed. "Hardly, but I enjoy it more than I anticipated." "Does that mean you're staying?" His tone was casual, but his eyes held a more serious question. Mary hesitated. "It's too soon to say definitively, but I'm leaning toward yes." Something in Owen's expression relaxed. "Good, the ranch needs you." He pushed away from the desk. "I should let you eat in peace. The children will be back soon enough." As he reached the door, Mary called after him, "Owen." He turned and she smiled. "Thank you for stopping me at the station." His answering smile was warm. "My pleasure, Miss Sullivan." The afternoon session went as smoothly as could be expected, with children of varying ages confined to one room after their midday energy boost. By the time Mary dismissed them at 4 o'clock, she was exhausted but satisfied with the day's progress. She stayed behind to organize materials for the next day, losing track of time until the lengthening shadows alerted her to the late hour. Gathering her things, she locked the schoolhouse and headed toward her cabin, looking forward to washing away the chalk dust before supper. As she passed the corral, she paused to watch Owen working with a young horse. He moved with a fluid grace that belied his size, murmuring softly to the nervous animal as he gradually accustomed it to a saddle blanket. There was something mesmerizing about the way man and beast communicated, a silent language of trust being built between them. Owen looked up, sensing her presence. "How was the rest of your day?" "Productive," Mary replied, approaching the fence. "You have a way with horses." He patted the young mare's neck. "Just patience and respect. They sense fear and dishonesty faster than any human." "A valuable lesson for all relationships, I imagine," Mary observed. Owen's eyes crinkled with amusement. "Are you always this philosophical after a day of teaching?" Mary laughed. "Perhaps. My father used to say my mind never stops working even when it should." He sounds like a wise man. "In some ways," Mary acknowledged. "Not in others." The mare nudged Owen's shoulder, drawing his attention. "I'd better finish with her before dark. See you at supper." Mary nodded and continued to her cabin, aware of a warmth in her chest that had nothing to do with the setting sun. The days fell into a pleasant rhythm. Each morning, Mary rang the school bell and welcomed her students. She organized them into groups based on ability, setting independent work for some while she instructed others. During lunch, she often found Owen or Margaret had left food for her, a kindness she deeply appreciated. In the evenings, she joined the family for supper, gradually becoming more comfortable contributing to conversations. Afterward, she would often sit on the porch of her cabin, grading papers or simply enjoying the peace of the ranch at twilight. Sometimes Owen would join her, bringing coffee or just his company. They would talk about the day's events, the progress of her students, or share stories from their pasts. Mary found herself looking forward to these quiet conversations, drawn to Owen's steady presence and thoughtful insights. 2 weeks after her arrival, Mary was preparing for the school day when a commotion outside caught her attention. Looking through the window, she saw dust rising from the approach of several riders. As they drew closer, she recognized the sheriff from the nearby town of Pine Ridge, accompanied by 2 deputies. They rode directly to the main house, where Owen emerged to meet them. Mary couldn't hear the conversation, but Owen's posture changed from welcoming to tense. After a brief exchange, the men dismounted and followed Owen toward the bunkhouse. The children began arriving, distracting Mary from the unfolding drama. She rang the bell and ushered them inside, determined to maintain their routine despite her curiosity about the sheriff's visit. Midway through the morning lesson, a sharp knock interrupted her. Owen stood in the doorway, his expression grave. "Miss Sullivan, might I have a word?" His voice was controlled, but Mary sensed underlying tension. "Children, please continue with your reading. I'll return shortly," she instructed, following Owen outside. Once they were out of earshot, Owen spoke in a low voice. "Sheriff Blake is here about a stagecoach robbery that happened yesterday near the Dry Creek crossing. 2 men held up the coach and took the strongbox. A passenger was shot." Mary's hand flew to her throat. "How terrible, but what does that have to do with Willow Creek?" Owen's jaw tightened. "One of our hands, Pete Wilson, wasn't in his bunk last night. He rode out yesterday afternoon saying he was visiting his sister in Pine Ridge. Sheriff found his bandana near the robbery site. Surely that's not enough there's more. The strongbox was found this morning empty, buried near the creek that runs along our south property line." Mary felt cold despite the warm morning. "Do you think he did it?" Owen ran a hand through his hair, a rare gesture of frustration. "Pete's been with us 3 years. Never gave us cause to doubt him, but he's been acting strange lately, spending money in town he shouldn't have. He shook his head, the sheriff searching the bunkhouse and Pete's things. "What can I do?" Mary asked. Owen's expression softened slightly. "Nothing. I just wanted you to know what was happening. Keep the children in the schoolhouse for now. If they ask, just say it's routine business." Mary nodded. "Of course." As she turned to go back inside, Owen caught her arm gently. "Mary." It was the first time he'd used her given name. "I don't want you worrying. Whatever happens, you're safe here." The intensity in his eyes made her breath catch. "I know," she said softly. Throughout the day, Mary did her best to focus on teaching, but her mind kept returning to the sheriff's visit and the troubled look in Owen's eyes. When she dismissed the children in the afternoon, she noticed several riders heading out from the ranch, likely joining the search for the missing Pete Wilson. At supper that evening, the mood was subdued. Owen arrived late, his expression weary. "Any news?" Thomas asked quietly. Owen shook his head. "Nothing. Sheriff's got men watching the trails. If Pete tries to leave the territory, they'll catch him." "And if he's innocent?" Margaret asked, voicing the question Mary had been thinking. "Then he'll come back and clear his name," Owen replied, though he didn't sound convinced. After the meal, Mary followed Owen outside. "You don't believe he did it, do you?" she asked. Owen leaned against the porch post, looking out at the darkening landscape. "I don't want to believe it." "But the evidence?" He sighed heavily. "Pete was in debt, gambling. I found out a month ago and warned him to clean up his act. Thought he had." "People make mistakes," Mary said gently. "It doesn't mean he's capable of robbery and shooting someone." Owen turned to her, a sad smile touching his lips. "You always look for the good in people, don't you?" "I try to," she admitted. "My father taught me that." "Your father sounds like he got some things very right," Owen said, his voice soft. They stood in companionable silence for a moment, watching the stars emerge in the darkening sky. Owen seemed about to say something more when Caleb, the foreman, rode up fast. "Boss, they found Pete's horse at Widow Jensen's place, but no sign of him." Owen straightened immediately. "Is Emma all right?" Shaken up. "Says Pete came by asking for money, then took off when she threatened to call the sheriff." Owen nodded grimly. "Saddle my horse, I'll join the search." Mary felt a flutter of fear. "Is it safe if he's desperate enough to rob a stagecoach?" Owen's expression softened as he looked at her. "I'll be fine. Pete's not a killer. The shooting was likely an accident. Still, be careful," she insisted. "I will." He hesitated, then reached out to briefly touch her hand. Don't wait up, this could take all night. Mary watched him stride toward the stables, his shoulders set with determination. Something had shifted between them in these past weeks, a growing connection neither had acknowledged openly but both clearly felt. That night, despite Owen's advice, Mary found sleep elusive. She sat by her cabin window, a lamp burning low, grating papers to distract herself from worry. The distant sound of hoofbeats around midnight drew her outside, but it was only one of the ranch hands returning to report to Thomas. Morning came with no news. Mary went through the motions of teaching, but her attention kept straying to the window, watching for riders. The children were unusually quiet, sensing the tension that pervaded the ranch. It was mid-afternoon when she heard the commotion, multiple horses arriving at a gallop. Instructing the children to continue their work, Mary stepped outside. A group of riders was approaching the main house. In their midst was Owen, and beside his horse walked a man with his hands bound, Pete Wilson. Relief flooded through Mary at the sight of Owen, safe and apparently unharmed. She rang the dismissal bell early, sending the children home with abbreviated assignments. As they scattered, she made her way toward the main house, where Thomas and Margaret had come out to meet the returning search party. Found him hiding in an abandoned line shack near the territorial border, Owen was explaining as Mary approached. Had most of the money still on him. Pete stood with his head bowed, refusing to meet anyone's eyes. He was a young man, barely into his 20s, with a boyish face now streaked with dirt and desperation. "Why, Pete?" Margaret asked, her voice sad rather than angry. "We would have helped you if you'd asked." Pete finally looked up, his expression a mixture of shame and defiance. "Needed more than help, madam. Owed money to some bad men. They was gonna kill me if I didn't pay." "So instead you risked killing someone else," Thomas said sternly. "Didn't mean to shoot nobody," Pete protested. "Gun went off when the coach hit a rut, I swear it," Sheriff Blake stepped forward. "Save it for the judge, Wilson. The passenger will live, but you're still looking at years in territorial prison." As the sheriff and his deputies prepared to take Pete away, Owen noticed Mary standing at the edge of the gathering. He excused himself and came to join her. "You're all right," she said, relief evident in her voice. "Told you I would be," he replied with a small smile. Pete gave himself up without a fight. He's not a hardened criminal, just a scared kid who made a terrible decision. Mary nodded, watching as the lawman helped Pete mount a horse. "What will happen to him?" "Prison, most likely. 5 years, maybe more." Owen's expression was grim. "Could have been worse. The man he shot is expected to recover fully." "It's all so sad," Mary murmured. Owen studied her face. "You look exhausted. Have you been worrying all night?" Mary flushed slightly. "I may have had trouble sleeping." "I'm touched by your concern," he said softly, his eyes holding hers. Before Mary could respond, Margaret called Owen's name, breaking the moment. He excused himself to speak with the sheriff before their departure. Mary returned to the schoolhouse to gather her things, her mind replaying the look in Owen's eyes. There had been something there, something that made her heart race and her breath catch, something that felt dangerously like the beginning of love. The incident with Pete Wilson cast a shadow over the ranch for several days, but gradually life returned to its normal rhythms. Mary found herself settling more deeply into her role as teacher, developing a genuine attachment to her students and pride in their progress. A month after her arrival at Willow Creek, Mary realized with some surprise that she no longer thought about the train ticket she'd torn in half or the life that might have been in Boston. This wild, beautiful place had become home, and its people, especially one tall, thoughtful cowboy, had become dear to her. On a warm Saturday afternoon, Mary was sitting by the creek, enjoying a rare moment of leisure while reading a book. The sound of approaching footsteps made her look up to find Owen walking toward her, leading 2 saddled horses. "Afternoon, Miss Sullivan," he greeted her, a smile playing at his lips. "Thought you might enjoy seeing more of the ranch than just the schoolhouse and main buildings." Mary marked her place in the book. "That sounds lovely, but I should warn you that I'm not much of a rider." "Buttercup here is the gentlest mare we have," Owen assured her, patting the dun-colored horse's neck. "She'll take good care of you." With Owen's assistance, Mary mounted the horse, arranging her skirts as modestly as possible. Owen swung easily onto his own mount, a tall chestnut gelding. "We'll take it slow," he promised, leading the way along a trail that followed the creek. As they rode, Owen pointed out features of the land, explaining how his father had chosen this valley for its year-round water and natural protection from the worst winter storms. He showed her where they planned to expand the grazing lands and described the improvements they hoped to make to the ranch buildings. "You have a vision for this place," Mary observed. "It's clearly more than just a business to you." Owen nodded. "It's a legacy. Not just for Margaret's children, but for the community we're building. A place where people can put down roots and prosper." They reached a rise overlooking the entire valley, and Owen suggested they rest. He helped Mary dismount, his hands lingering at her waist for just a moment longer than necessary. The contact sent a flutter through her stomach that had nothing to do with the ride. They sat on a fallen log, the horses grazing nearby. The view was spectacular, the ranch buildings in the distance, surrounded by green pastures and golden hills, all under an endless blue sky. "It's beautiful," Mary said softly. "Yes," Owen agreed, though when she turned, she found him looking at her rather than the landscape. Mary felt her cheeks warm. "Owen, I'm glad you stayed," he said simply. "Willow Creek is better with you here." "I'm glad too," she admitted. "I can't imagine being anywhere else now." Something shifted in Owen's expression, a softening around his eyes. "Mary, I need to tell you something. When I saw you at that train station, I didn't just stop you because we needed a teacher." Mary's heart began to race. "No," he shook his head slowly. "There was something about you, something that made me think you belonged here." His voice dropped lower. "With me." The world seemed to still around them. Mary found it difficult to breathe as Owen reached out to gently touch her cheek. "I know it's only been a month," he continued. "And I'm not asking for anything you're not ready to give, but I care for you, Mary Sullivan, more than I expected to." Mary covered his hand with her own. "I care for you too," she whispered. "I've never felt this way before." Owen's smile was like sunrise breaking over the mountains. Slowly, giving her every chance to pull away, he leaned forward. Their lips met in a gentle, questioning kiss that quickly deepened as Mary responded, her hand moving to his shoulder. When they finally parted, both were breathing unevenly. Owen rested his forehead against hers. "I've been wanting to do that since the first week you were here." Mary laughed softly. "And I've been wanting you to." They sat together on the hillside until the sun began to dip toward the horizon, talking and sharing occasional kisses. Owen told her more about his childhood, his father's death, and the struggles to keep the ranch going afterward. Mary spoke of her mother's early passing, her father's dreams, and her own fears for the future after his death. "I felt so lost," she confessed. "The train seemed like my only escape." Owen squeezed her hand. "Sometimes the best path isn't the one we plan." As they rode back to the ranch in the golden light of sunset, Mary felt a profound sense of rightness. Whatever the future held, she knew she was exactly where she belonged. The following weeks were filled with a quiet joy as Mary and Owen's relationship deepened. They were discreet, mindful of her position as the ranch's teacher, but their growing attachment was evident to those closest to them. "You've brought the light back to my brother's eyes," Margaret commented one evening as she and Mary prepared vegetables for supper. "I haven't seen him this happy in years," Mary blushed. "He's brought light to mine as well." Margaret smiled knowingly. "Good, you both deserve happiness." As summer progressed toward autumn, Mary's school thrived. The children made remarkable progress, particularly those who had started with the greatest educational deficits. Word spread to neighboring ranches, and 3 more students joined her class. One Saturday, in late September, Owen suggested another ride. This time he packed a picnic, and they traveled to a secluded spot where a small waterfall fed into a crystal-clear pool. The day was warm, the sky a perfect blue, and wildflowers still dotted the surrounding meadow. They ate beneath the shade of a cottonwood tree, talking easily about everything and nothing. After the meal, they walked hand in hand along the water's edge. "I've been thinking," Owen said, his tone casual though Mary sensed an undercurrent of nervousness. "The ranch has been doing well this year, better than expected." "That's wonderful," Mary replied. Wondering where this conversation was leading, Owen stopped walking and turned to face her. Mary, these past months with you have been the happiest of my life. I know it hasn't been very long, but sometimes when something's right, you just know. Mary's heart began to pound as Owen took both her hands in his. I love you, Mary Sullivan. I want to build a life with you here at Willow Creek. He reached into his pocket and withdrew a small ring with a single pearl set in gold. This was my mother's. I'd be honored if you'd wear it as my wife. Tears sprang to Mary's eyes. Owen, if you need time to think about it, I understand, he said quickly. I know it's sudden. Mary shook her head, smiling through her tears. I don't need time. I love you too, and nothing would make me happier than to be your wife. Relief and joy transformed Owen's face. He slipped the ring onto her finger, then pulled her into a kiss that conveyed all the emotion words couldn't express. When they finally broke apart, both laughing and a little breathless, Owen kept his arms around her waist. How soon can I make you Mrs. Blackwood? Mary pretended to consider. Well, I should finish out the school term. Owen groaned dramatically. That's months away. Or, Mary continued, her eyes twinkling, we could be married when the circuit preacher comes through next month. Next month, Owen repeated, grinning. I like the sound of that. They spent the rest of the afternoon making plans, envisioning their future together at Willow Creek. As the sun began to set, they reluctantly mounted their horses for the ride home, eager to share their news with the family. Margaret's reaction was one of pure joy. She embraced Mary tightly, whispering, I've been hoping for this since the day he brought you home. Thomas shook Owen's hand firmly, then pulled him into a back-slapping hug. About time, brother. We were starting to think you'd never get around to asking. The children were equally excited, especially when Mary assured her students that she would continue teaching after the wedding. Where will you live? Abby asked practically. We'll be expanding the main house, Owen explained, adding a wing with our own private quarters but still connected to the family home. Construction began immediately, with ranch hands and neighbors pitching in to help. The community's response to their engagement was overwhelmingly positive, with many expressing that it felt meant to be. As the wedding approached, Mary found herself reflecting on the remarkable turn her life had taken. Had she boarded that train east, she would never have known this happiness, this sense of belonging, this love. All because a perceptive cowboy had seen something in her face and offered an alternative. The day before the wedding, a letter arrived for Mary from Matthew Holloway, the man who had purchased her father's property. She read it with a mixture of curiosity and detachment, surprised to find that the emotions it stirred were far less powerful than she would have expected months ago. Everything all right? Owen asked. Finding her on the porch with the letter in hand, Mary smiled. Yes, just news from Cottonwood Springs. The man who bought our house has discovered some promising silver deposits on the land. He's offering me a percentage of any profits as a courtesy. Owen raised his eyebrows. That's unexpected and generous. Yes, Mary agreed, though honestly I'd have traded all the silver in the world for what I've found here. She reached for his hand. For you. Owen pulled her close, pressing a kiss to her forehead. No regrets about that torn ticket. Not a single one, Mary said firmly. This is where I belong. The wedding day dawned clear and bright. Margaret and several of the women had transformed the ranch's common room with wildflowers, ribbons, and candles. Mary wore a simple white dress that Margaret had helped her make, with lace at the collar and cuffs. Her hair was arranged in soft curls with a crown of small white flowers. As Mary prepared in Margaret's bedroom, there was a knock at the door. Abby, who was serving as her attendant, opened it to find one of the younger ranch hands holding a small package. This just arrived by special messenger for Miss Sullivan, he explained. Mary opened the package to find a delicate gold locket on a fine chain, accompanied by a note in Owen's handwriting. For my bride. Something new to go with something borrowed and blue. All my love, Owen. Tears sprang to her eyes as Margaret helped her fasten the locket around her neck. It's perfect, she whispered. The ceremony itself was simple but deeply meaningful. Mary would forever remember the look in Owen's eyes as she walked toward him, the warmth of his hands holding hers as they spoke their vows, and the tender kiss they shared as husband and wife. The celebration afterward lasted well into the evening, with music, dancing, and more food than the entire gathering could possibly consume. As the night drew to a close, Owen led Mary to their newly completed quarters, a comfortable suite of rooms adjoining the main house, but offering privacy for the newlyweds. "Welcome home, Mrs. Blackwood," he said softly, lifting her into his arms to carry her across the threshold. Mary wrapped her arms around his neck, overcome with happiness. "I love you, Owen Blackwood." His answering kiss was tender and promising, the beginning of their life together. In the years that followed, Willow Creek Ranch prospered under Owen's steady leadership. The school grew along with the community, eventually moving to a proper schoolhouse built in what became the small town of Willow Creek, half a mile from the ranch. Mary continued teaching until the birth of their first child, a daughter they named Elizabeth, after Owen's mother. A son, James, followed 2 years later, and eventually another daughter, Sarah. When the children were old enough, Mary returned to teaching part-time, balancing her passion for education with her love for her family. The proceeds from the silver mine on her father's former property were invested in improvements to the ranch, and a scholarship fund for promising students who wished to continue their education beyond what the local school could provide. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Owen surprised Mary with a trip back to the train station where they had first met. As they stood on the platform, watching a train pull in, he wrapped his arm around her waist. "Any regrets?" he asked teasingly. Mary looked up at her husband, his face more lined than it had been a decade ago, but still handsome, still beloved. She thought of their children waiting at home, of the community they had helped build, of the hundreds of lives touched through their work. "Not a single one," she said truthfully. "That day when I stood here with my ticket, I thought I was leaving everything behind. I never imagined I was actually heading toward everything that mattered." Owen kissed her softly. "Best decision I ever made stopping you that day. Best decision I ever made listening," Mary replied. As they walked away from the station, hand in hand, Mary glanced back at the train that would have taken her to a different life. She had once stared at such a train with a ticket in hand and desperation in her heart. Now she looked at it with gratitude for the path not taken and for the cowboy who had shown her a better way. Together, they returned to Willow Creek Ranch, to their home, their family, and the life they had built from a moment of trust and a chance taken on a dusty platform all those years ago.